Welcome to Only Murders in My Mind, a Random Thought production. Hi, I'm Carol Bissett, a crime writer, and I invite you with my co-presenters, Liz Hedgecock and Mike Jackson, each week to our conversations on all things murderous.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Only Murders in My Mind. My name is Mike Jackson and I'm here today with my good friend Liz.
Hello.
You will notice that we've no Carol with us today. Unfortunately, she's still poorly and yet again she has left us two in charge. Foolish woman.
Indeed. Who knows what will happen
Who
today?
knows indeed. And today we're going to be talking about sounds of suspense.
Not the sound of silence, which you might prefer.
Yeah. All about how sounds are used in mystery thrillers, murder stories, both in books themselves and also in TV, films and series. So any thoughts, Liz?
Ooh, well, where do you start? I mean, I suppose my initial thoughts were around, dialogue and noises and the building of suspense there. But I was also thinking about things like incidental music and theme tunes. So something from a long, long time ago, I remember is listening to the Inspector Morse music. And I don't know if you recall, but the music spells out Morse in Morse code.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Dun, 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 dun.
And it's just...
That's Morse in Morse code.
Yeah. Oh, right.
Yeah.
I think the thing is that you certainly with regard to stories, murder mystery stories that appear on the big screen or on TV, you get much more opportunity to use sound. And it's also one of the things I was looking into is the role of silence in murder mysteries.
Ooh, go on. Do elaborate.
Well, one of the first ones that probably comes to mind is Silence of the Lambs. Because apparently when Clarice Starling meets Hannibal Lecter for the first time, there's a stark absence of background noises. So the focus is on the chilling conversation between the characters. And you've got...
Of course, they're in a facility, aren't they?
Where there is no sound. So everything's down onto Lecter's calm, measured responses, which are somewhat unnerving.
Somewhat.
Yeah. But it makes more so by the quiet, amplifying the psychological tension. So it just shows sometimes quiet can do that.
Yeah. I suppose also it's the thing of you can't hear anyone else around. She is literally very alone with Hannibal Lecter, which is not a good place to be.
No, it's not. No. There are I found a few examples, but unfortunately, there's things I don't know if they mean anything to you. The Silent Witness, Rear Window.
Oh.
No, doesn't mean anything to me.
Well, Silent Witness is the series with autopsies, isn't it?
Oh, is it? Oh, yes.
Yes. I mean, they are silent witnesses because they are bodies.
Because they're bodies. Another one is our good old friend, Agatha.
I knew she'd come up somewhere.
The Locked Room and Then There Were None.
I've just reread that.
All right.
Oh, it was fantastic.
Yeah.
I do like that when you reread a story and it is, as suspenseful as you remember it. And the thing is, I know what's happening because obviously I've read it and I've seen it. And if you haven't read it, then it's, just read it. Yeah. You just should.
What I've got written down is the survivors listen in silence after discovering yet another body. And it's the lack of the spoken word, heightened suspicion and paranoia among the
Does
characters. This
relate to a particular adaptation?
It doesn't say so, no.
Oh, okay.
No. So,
But yeah, there is... They spend quite a lot of time because they're on an island, trying to work out, because at first the assumption is, well, clearly someone's got us all here and they're hiding somewhere and they're murdering people when our backs are turned.
Yeah.
So they're combing the island looking for someone. And of course, they find nobody. And it's things like, they can hear the waves or they can hear the storm. And it's that sense of isolation because no boat can get through.
That's right. And it's, another one, which is not really murder mystery, though there's some killing in it. It's the I used to love westerns, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Oh gosh, I don't think I've ever seen a
Oh, have you not
Western,
seen?
No.
Uh,
Again, it's my legacy of films I have
Yeah.
never seen.
At one point, there's a 3-way duel, a gunfight at a
Blimey.
cemetery. And it's the silence that comes before the gunfire. It's that while everybody's waiting, you've got these men all sort of facing each other, and there's this absolute silence.
So is there any music? Or
No.
So
there's absolute silence. You've got people watching, and everybody's waiting to see what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then when it happens, the contrast is this noise of all these guns going off.
Yes. Wow.
Did you ever watch The Night Manager?
I did not.
Oh, there's so many things you need to catch up with, Liz.
No, too busy reading.
Yeah, that was a great series.
Yeah, I do mean to.
Yeah.
I do mean to. That's the thing. I don't ever not mean to watch these things. It's just getting around to it.
Yeah. But there's a scene there where Jonathan Pine, who's the main character, is sneaking through Roper's compound to gather evidence. Roper is the baddie, who's played by a comedian who did that hospital program in America. Was it ER?
Comedian who did a hospital.
Yeah. It's the versatility of the man is that it will come back to me. I shall look it up in a minute. Anyway, It's the absence of, as he's sneaking through this place, it's the absence of sound that heightens the suspense.
Yes.
Because every move could potentially, reveal him.
Yeah.
So the silence sort of mirrors that high stakes of espionage.
I'm just thinking now of, I know this isn't, well, it sort of is, I suppose, Mission Impossible, the movie.
Yes.
When he comes down on the string and it's all, it's going fine. And then all of a sudden, like sweat, and the drop goes, bink, and then it goes, whap, whap, whap. See, you even get sound effects there. You were talking about sound effects earlier, Mike, weren't you?
Yes. I didn't know. I should do, but I didn't know what Foley artists did. So I had to look it up. And they are the people who create the sound effects, basically.
Yes.
Used to. They have all sorts of objects they use to mimic real world sound.
Yeah, so they have like trays of gravel and stuff
That's
like
right.
that, don't they? Kind of walk shoes up and down them and stuff. There you go.
Yeah, what was his name?
Hugh Laurie.
Hugh
Laurie was Roper.
Hugh Laurie
there
was
we go.
Roper.
See, I don't think of him as a comedian anymore.
No.
So much.
But he does so much serious stuff too. And that really is a good series to watch.
Yes. Well, now I've remembered that Hugh Laurie's in it. I might actually get round to it. So there you go. But yes, Foley artists.
Yeah, and it's something interesting. They improvise with everyday objects. Bones cracking. What do you think they use there?
I'm slightly worried to ask, but go on.
Celery being snapped.
Fair enough.
Bird wings flapping.
No, go on.
A pair of gloves being shaken.
Oh yeah, I can see that. Well,
swords clashing.
Cutlery.
Pots and pans being struck together. Yeah. That. And what made me wonder is that with all that can happen now with technology and certainly with AI nowadays, do these people, is there still a need for these Foley artists? Or
I think there is, because you could have the noise or have it recorded even, and then just press the button for glove flapping or pot bashing, but it just wouldn't be the same, would it?
No.
And you wouldn't have a live performer reacting to what needed to happen. So yeah, I don't think it would be the same at all. We need our people with their boxes of tricks.
Yeah. Some fun facts about Foley artists.
Oh, go on then.
Now this is a dinosaur. I'm going back to Jurassic Park and the Velociraptor.
Yes.
Velociraptors?
Yes.
Footsteps in Jurassic Park were created using a mix of dog footsteps and human stomping.
Okay. So did they, when you say created using a mix of, did they kind of manipulate the sounds or how did they do it? Or did they just sometimes play dog footsteps and sometimes play stompy humans?
I don't know. I would imagine they would mix the two together because I would imagine what they must do, these Foley artists, they must build up a recording of all the different things that they do. so that when they've got the clomping horses, they don't always have to go and get the coconut shells out because they've done it once before. You know?
Yeah, but you might want different rhythms, I
yes,
suppose.
you might do, yeah. But
I mean, the thing is, if you were doing some kind of, historical drama when everyone's on horseback, you wouldn't want the same rhythm of horses all the time. So
no.
It would be like if you watch Neighbours and they cut to the hospital and it's always the same car parked outside because it's the same shot.
Yeah. No, doesn't it annoy you when that sometimes happens? You think, those people haven't moved. They've been there for 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's like the Truman Show, isn't it? When the guy goes past again. Hey, we went on a ramble then.
Yes, yeah.
There you see, we can do it without Carol.
But it is how, I mean, it's not just Foley artists, but that whole business of using sound. Some of the obvious ones, like that creaking floorboard in a quiet house where a murder is being investigated.
Yes.
Or the ticking clock in a detective's office during a late night review.
Yeah. And I think there's something powerful in the small sounds.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. Because, it would be easy to have a big, crash bang wallop. But, in some ways, those little things help to build up the suspense.
Yes, they do. And as I said before, it's easy to build those into a recording, whether it's a film recording or a TV. How do you do it as a writer? When you've somehow you've got to put those sounds into words, but you don't want it to be taking away from the story, do you? You don't want a long description about the ticking clock.
No.
But then again, you don't want there was a ticking clock in the background. Doesn't actually tell you. It's got to be built into the atmosphere,
if possible, kind of drip fed if you possibly can. Yeah. But I was thinking about this because I've been proofreading a book which is, hopefully by now it is out and available to buy and available to look at, called A Spider's Web, which now has a new publisher. And while I was reading through it, I thought, this would be an interesting thing to use with respect to our Sounds of Suspense podcast. So this is my protagonist, Mrs. Hudson, is returning home after a busy and slightly frustrating day, and she notices that something's amiss. I left the shop and turned towards home, my smart-heeled boots clicking on the paving stones. A good morning's work, I thought to myself. I have earned my lunch. The streets were comparatively quiet. Perhaps everyone was eating lunch at a restaurant or at home. Then I heard an odd sound, like a pair of hobnailed boots with one boot louder than the other. Clack, click. For some reason, it made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I moved to the curb on the pretence of crossing the road and glanced behind me, but saw no one whose appearance corresponded with that noise. I crossed the road and continued on my way. Just a silly fancy, I thought. But a couple of minutes later, there it was again. Clack, click, clack, click. I could not look round. Then whoever it was would know I had seen them. It's broad daylight, I told myself. You're imagining things. I stepped into a side street out of my way, and after a slight pause, clack, click, clack, click. It could be a coincidence. It's only a person with one odd boot walking the same way as you. I turned right, then right again to return to the main road. I kept my pace steady, brisk rather than unhurried, and still the clack, click followed me. Don't run. I kept walking and was rewarded after a minute or two with the sign for an underground railway station. I took a ticket and went to the platform. When the next train came, I got straight on, then jumped off just before the doors closed. No one else left the train, and I watched it pull away with a sense of relief. I went to the opposite platform, took the next train, changed to a different line at the next opportunity, and disembarked at the station closest to Baker Street. I ran up the steps listening all the while, but I did not hear that odd, uneven gait. I should have felt safe, but I did not. I emerged into the street and went to the cab rank, promising the driver double his fare if he would drive like the wind. The destination I gave him was not Baker Street, but a road perhaps a quarter of a mile away. The cab driver was almost certainly trustworthy, but what if I had not shaken off my pursuer with the odd boots and they had handed the chase to someone else? They could easily have followed the cab.
I like that. Yeah. It fits into it, doesn't it, that psychological impact of sounds. That certain sounds trigger emotions like fear and unease, anticipation.
And the thing is, I suppose, because Mrs. Hudson is a detective herself and she is used to watching out for that, probably your everyday person would think nothing of it.
Yeah.
Probably just, oh, that's a person with a funny boot there, needs
Yeah.
mending, that does. But yeah, because she's quite tuned into that stuff, and then she takes action to think, oh, it's probably nothing, and then it keeps going. After a little pause as well. So it's that feeling of, has it gone? Has it gone? I think it's gone. There it is again.
And that's what noises, sounds can do, can't they? They can play on your mind. So whether it's that gentle ticking of a clock or that wind blowing outside or whatever, depending on what state of mind you're in, it can have a real impact on you. And I suppose that's the skill of the writer in building up that sense of unease or that sense of mystery or that sense of fear, so that when the sound comes in, it just heightens it.
One of the things in And Then There Were None, which, like I said, I was rereading, is quite often a character will go into a room where another character is, and they'll find them, staring out of the window, or listening to the waves breaking on the shore and stuff like that. And it's it's partly they want to escape, they want to leave the island, and they know they can't. But I think also it's that kind of, I'm focusing on looking out so that I don't have to look in and look around me, and what will I see if I do?
Yeah.
So yes, it's creepy as. It's funny though, the way it's written, there's an awful lot of he said, she said.
Oh, is there?
Much, much more than I've seen in any other Agatha Christie book that I can recall. So it's very much, Lombard said, : then he says something, and then she said, and then says something. He said, says something. So I'm wondering if that was put in later. I don't know.
Might be.
Yeah.
It's funny. I've been going off on one of our notorious tangents here, as often we do. One of the best books I've ever read about writing, about the craft of writing.
Oh, yes.
Is Stephen King's On Writing.
Yes.
And in there,
that is very good.
Yeah, in there he says, keep your writing simple. If somebody said something, say they said something. You don't have to have all these whispered, etc., etc.
Yeah.
If it's what they did, they said, then use the word said.
Yes.
Which sounds like it's happening in there.
Yeah. I mean, something that as an editor I find is, and something that I find myself correcting is a lot is, she sighed.
Yes.
He screamed. She bellowed. He hissed. She grumbled. All of those things. And it's like, you can't laugh out many words.
No.
I mean, you can try, but it's not easy.
And I think that's what Stephen King was saying. Let's not make writing complicated. Let's keep it simple, because that's what the reader wants.
Yeah, because things like he said, she said, I mean, they tend to disappear.
Yes.
And half the time you don't need a dialogue tag anyway. No. If the voice for each character is sufficiently strong, you should be able to tell who's talking.
Yeah. Some of the other notes I had on this subject were nature's role in suspense.
Ooh, go on.
Well, something like a wolf's distant howl in a wilderness mystery, or Hound of the Baskervilles.
Oh yes,
the noise of the dog,
a gigantic hound.
Yeah, the mystery, in the misty.
Yeah.
Common. Was it Exmoor, Dartmoor?
Dartmoor, I think. Dartmoor, yeah. See, they'd probably be snapping some celery for the dog crunching the bones.
Crunching bones.
Yeah, an awful lot of celery on Dartmoor. Yeah.
The other one that came up was the sound of crashing waves making a scream, masking a scream in a seaside mystery murder. Or the rustling of leaves as a killer stalks their victim.
Ooh, yes.
It's all your Foley artists again, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. I wonder what they use for rustling leaves. Yeah. But no, I was also thinking about things like theme music and incidental music for films and series. Yeah. So, the fantastic theme tune for Slow Horses.
Yep.
Which really sets the scene.
Yeah. Psycho, another one.
Oh, yes. And the violins.
Yeah.
Roop, roop, roop. Yeah.
It's also something like misleading sounds.
Go on.
Well, how authors and directors can use sounds to misdirect the audience.
Mm-hmm.
So a scream turns out to be a fox in the night.
Yes.
A gunshot turns out to be a champagne cork popping. Just that. It's a bit like a red herring, isn't it? Throwing in a sound that's actually going to take your readers off in one direction, but not the direction that will help.
Indeed. There's a bit in a book I've fairly recently completed where they reconstruct a scene to try and get at what happened.
Right.
And the funny thing is, people hear a shot fired, but they didn't actually hear it on the night.
Yeah.
But of course, everyone reacts, even though they never heard it at the actual time. You know, and of course, it isn't, a shot, it's something else. But it's kind of, thinking about it now, it's interesting that we did that when the thing happened for real, the shot was not heard.
It is going back to that red herring, because I can think of sort of TV series I've seen where the police are interviewing various witnesses. Oh yes, I heard a shot. Oh no, I think it was a car. Oh, I didn't hear anything. And it's that. Is it important? Isn't it important?
Yeah.
It's the whole about building up.
And also things like establishing an alibi by pretending to be a person and speaking.
Yeah.
As them, and then therefore, well, they were obviously alive then because we heard them.
Yeah.
Even though you didn't, you just thought you did.
Yeah.
So yeah, misdirection.
That's right. I did find this one. I've got a 100-word story here. It's called The Return Journey. And it just fits into this because the start of the story, everybody has to be very quiet.
Okay.
Just 100 words. Remember, I whispered. We walk across the bridge, dead quiet, not a whisper. Got it? And no stopping for a peep over the edge. Remember what happened to Jimmy yesterday. We got to the middle before we heard the thing sniffing. It knew we were there. I grabbed young Sally Tompkins and tossed her over the rails. Huge hairy arms grabbed her mid-air and dragged her beneath the bridge. There was a cracking sound of bones snapping and her screaming stopped. As we safely reached the other side, I wondered who I would have to sacrifice for the return trip.
Indeed. See, I've just got celery in my mind.
Yeah, and as I read it out, I thought celery.
Well, there you go, listeners. If you've got nothing else from this, I bet they're all going to their fridges now and snapping celery. Oh, it does, doesn't it? I might have to snap some celery when I get home.
Yeah, just think how it's going to spoil people's stories. You're there sitting there watching a television program, really gripping, and you're all bloodthirsty, and somebody's bones get snapped, and you turn around to your partner and say, "That was celery snapping. They weren't real bones."
Either that, or you're just, having a quiet time in your house, and then suddenly you hear
crack. Yep.
And your significant other wanders in with a pot of hummus and a celery stick in the other hand.
We might have to name this podcast episode. The
celery queen.
Celery snappers.
Yes. Not Peaky Blinders, celery snappers. Yes.
Yeah.
And on that note, I think we should probably quit while we're behind.
I think we should.
Yes.
I think we should. Yes.
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much, everybody, for listening.
Hope you've enjoyed it.
Yes, we hope. And
hope you've learned something.
Yeah.
Even if it's just about celery.
And if you get a chance, please like the podcast, leave a comment. That would be great. Subscribe to the podcast on the YouTube. And also, if you get a chance, have a look at our blog. You can find it at onlymurdersinmymind.wordpress.com. And you'll find all sorts of interesting things on there. And don't forget, if you've got anything you would like to talk to us about, tell us about, questions, we'd love to hear from you. So thanks very much. Goodbye.
You have been listening to Only Murders in My Mind, a Random Thought production, produced by John Bissett. The music in Peril was composed and recorded by OM Studio Strings.